The Grady and Big Joe Show. Talk sports at 239-1070. Or email us, GradyandJoe@1070thefan.com. Now, here's Michael Grady and Big Joe Stasiak.
And good morning. Grady and Big Joe Show, 107.5, 1070 The Fan. Michael Grady, Big Joe Stasiak, D Squared, Scotty J. We welcome you at 239-1070, 239-1070. Email GradyandJoe@1070thefan.com. On Twitter, at Grady, at Grady. We are loaded today, but I'm going to start off the show, and bear with me through a lot here, but I'm going to start off the show with some news regarding this show that I love so much. And I love this show for multiple reasons. Bear with me here. Growing up on the east side of Indianapolis, my early Colts memories involve meeting Eric Dickerson with my mom at an autograph session. She low-key liked him. Watching Steve Ettman return a Dan Marino interception, 90 yards for a game-sealing touchdown. That magical let-her-rip ride of 1995 and getting there despite number 79.
Easy, fella.
Early Pacers memories, beginning with Reggie Miller in the Garden, 25-point fourth quarter, the choke sign, the crotch grab, 8 points in 9 seconds, Rick Smits over Tree Rollins, Reggie over Jordan, reaching the NBA Finals in 2000. And, while growing up with my mom and sister, I remember listening to the radio at the bus stop, waiting to get to John Strange and then eventually Stony Brook Middle School. And then, of course, Warren Central. I listened to Jeff Pigeon. I listened to Terry Stacey. And I always felt like I was a part of the conversation, like they were family. And I was like 8. But they were inviting, they were warm, they were funny. I was always attracted to laughter on the radio. Dave Wilson and that guy again, number 79, Joe Stasiak. And there were other shows on other stations too. They just always seemed like they were genuinely having the most fun. And fortunately, I was able to do radio at Warren Central, and inspired by my favorite sportscasters, music station DJs like Guy Black, Jerry Wade, Mad Flavor Live, for those who remember that, my news talk favorites. Shout out to Dan Henn, who was my instructor at Warren Central High School, who encouraged me. And then on to Then Sins for their broadcasting program. And I loved Tom Young, who was an instructor there. I had lunch with him a few years ago, and he won't remember this. But first day of class, he went around the room and he asked students what they wanted to do when they graduated. And I knew my answer right away, and I told him, and I said very proudly that I wanted to be a broadcast professional in Indianapolis. And his response, which I took as sarcastic, was straight to the big time, huh? and then he dismissively went on to the next student. I was like, what? And that really motivated me beyond words. And 2 years later, I was writing just about every radio station in Indianapolis, hoping to get an opportunity, just a foot in the door. Hot 96.3 offered me an internship, which I strongly considered. I want to give them a shout out because I grew up listening to them as well. But Ken Sterling, who was the assistant program director for WIBC, he wrote me back and he asked me to call him on a Thursday at 3:15. I've told this story before. I may have said different times, but let's just say it was a Thursday at 3:15. He told me to call him. And Thursday at 3:15, I gave him a call. He answered, and he invited me in for an interview and told me that if I would have called him at 3:16, he wouldn't have taken the call because being on time is everything, especially in radio. He gave me a 3-hour board opting shift on Saturday afternoon, where I directed a pet doctor show with Kerry Wassam and a cooking show with Linda Ali. And that was my radio life. Every Saturday, 3 hours a day from 3 to 6 p.m. Pet doctor show. Hey, I need to talk to Dr. Kerry Wassam. My dog is pooping all over the place. Yeah, please hold. Or Linda Ali, where we had some good food. I had duck for the first time in my life with Linda Ali. Look, I wanted to do sports. But I grew up, again, listening to WIBC, and this was a foot in the door at a premier radio station and premier radio company in Indy, so I had to take it. And this was June 2003. 4 months later, there was an opening to produce and board out for Indiana Sports Talk with Bob Lovell. And, Bob will always be like a father figure to me for the way he took me under his wing when I got started and encouraged me. And I say that because during this time, I mainly worked nights and weekends at the radio station and very few people in the building during those times. And when I would come in for a fill-in shift during business hours, I often felt small, almost intimidated, like people didn't care who I was, and it was a little overwhelming at times. And Coach Lovell would always, remind me and tell me how talented I was, and that I was destined to do great things. And I will always love and appreciate Coach for that. Confidence growing. And he certainly played a role there, doing a little bit more. And in late 2007, we began the process of launching 1070 The Fan. Ken Sterling was the first program director for The Fan, and he hired me on as executive producer. And it was hours and hours of work to get the station started. For the first week or so, maybe it was a little over a week, all we did was play classic Colts, Pacers, Indy 500, Brickyard 400, some IU games. That's all we aired for about a week straight for 24/7. And I had to edit every last one of those games, insert a promo for here's what's coming, 1070 The Fan. And I spent hours doing it. I was locked in the studio. I grew a James Harden beard. I missed the holidays. By January 8th, 2008, we were finally ready for the hard launch. And our first show was Kravitz and Eddie, for those who remember that.
Straight to the big time.
And I learned straight to the big time. And I learned, I learned a lot about the process of putting on a show. I think the guys would admit when we started the station and we started doing the show, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know what we were doing, and we were just gonna figure it out. And I learned so much during that process, and I had so many great memories with those two, Kravitz and Eddie. And I was also the voiceover guy as well, back when we couldn't afford Zeus. So I was the guy when you were listening to the station in the early days. If you're listening to 1070 The Fan, I'd be in the studio and cutting all these different liners and things like that. That was me. And it just so happened that around that same time, the Pacers were looking for an eventual successor to the great Rhett Porter. I came in for a meeting, and we agreed that I would start off doing some MC work for the Pacers, and that eventually led to doing PA for the Indiana Fever. And jumping ahead, I must say, calling their WNBA championship run. They had multiple, but the one that finished with the championship in 2012, and following Tamika Catchings over the course of her career, that will always be one of my favorite memories. And then I started announcing Pacer games. And the first game I remember ever attending at the Fieldhouse, my mom got tickets. It was a playoff game, Pacers, Sixers, Iverson versus Reggie in the upper level. It was a loss, but I had a great time with her. And then fast forward, here I was pinching myself every game night, courtside, sitting next to Dean Heveland, Bill Bevan, announcing Eastern Conference playoff games, announcing Eastern Conference finals, wearing that damn velvet yellow jacket, for those who remember that. Nothing will top the Tua that Reb created. But I have to admit, it gets me emotional when I'm watching Fox Sports Indiana and watching Chris and Quinn, or visiting the Fieldhouse, and I hear the Indiana chant. Radio was still home. After working with Kravitz and Eddie, I desperately, wanted to host a show. I wanted to interact with fans, debate, and laugh about our favorite teams. And we started The Voice of the Fan, airing on Sunday mornings, where, we would bring two listeners in, and we would just talk about sports for 2 hours. It was a way for me to connect with indie sports fans, get my feet wet as a host. And in 2011, I joined Big Joe as a co-host, and the Grady and Big Joe show was born. And, at a pickup game at the Fieldhouse, I think it was maybe some media people, and we had a game against some guys from Area 55, and I met David Deering. who was a student at IUPUI, an avid listener of the show, who wanted an opportunity in radio. And it was a no-brainer to bring you in, David. And you have been an excellent producer for this show. Scotty J, also our producer, head research guy, who really doesn't even need a computer to run off sports facts in great detail. And Big Joe, our chemistry developed quickly. You became my brother almost immediately. We have shared some amazing moments on these airwaves these last 8 years. And one of the great compliments that I receive is when people say it still sounds like we're in studio together. And we haven't been since October 2017. So I'll go back for a moment. 2014, Eric Yutzy, great guy, great sportscaster for WTHR. He leaves and moves to Miami for a great job. Jason Spells was working at RTV6. He takes a job at WTHR replacing Yutzy. And he did so it was around May when the Indy 500 was heating up and the NBA playoffs were starting to heat up, and the Pacers were, a really good team. And so with Dave First and Brad Brown, great guys covering the track, RTV6 reached out and asked if I would help them cover the Pacers and do Pacer reports during the playoffs and travel to the games. And this was when they took on Atlanta in round one, a series that won 7 games, and the Wizards in the second round, and eventually the Miami Heat. And look, I always wanted to do TV, and this was a chance, again, to get my foot in the door. The Pacers reached the Eastern Conference Finals, of course. I even ended up announcing some of the games on radio with Mark Boyle, another big-time mentor of mine. And a few months later, RTV6 offered me the chance to join their staff full-time. And I want to thank Terry Cope Walton and Dave First for that. My only request was, when I took the job, was that I be allowed to continue doing the radio show. I've told this story before, but a bizarre moment that kind of changed the course of my career. An old college professor of mine at IUPUI decided to drive an Uber for extra cash when the Final Four was last in Indianapolis. And he picked up a passenger, struck up a conversation, completely random, found out that this guy was a media agent from New York. And my old college professor gave him my name and suggested, hey, I think you should look this guy up. This agent, his name is Jeff. He did his homework, and he reached out to me, flew me out to New York. And after a good chat, he became my agent. He got me visits at, ESPN and visits at Fox. And he told me about an amazing opportunity not long ago in New York with Yes Network. A chance to work even closer with an NBA team, traveling with a Brooklyn Nets franchise that was, struggling at the moment, but had a great broadcast with Ian Eagle, Ryan Ruocco, Sarah Kustok, and now Richard Jefferson, and a chance to work with the New York Yankees. I've wanted to be a broadcaster since I was 16 years old. My goal was always to push this as far as I can go. I've always wanted to make my family proud, my friends proud, you proud, myself proud, and this was an opportunity, after 34 years in my forever home of Indianapolis, that in my heart of hearts I could not pass up. But I asked Yes Network, can I continue to do the radio show? I wanted to. I was still under contract, yes, here at MS, but I desperately wanted to continue this show. I desperately wanted to keep it going. This was and will always be home. I wanted to honor my contract and prove that I could live in New York. I could travel with the Nets, still have a great time laughing, arguing, debating, and interacting with you at home, in your car, in a semi, in a classroom, David, at work, in your office,
Sorry, Coach Level.
wherever you may be, and wherever I may have been. 7 a.m. in San Francisco before a game against the Warriors, early morning in Houston, Texas, or a hotel in Boston, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, Phoenix. I did the show in a park in Miami once.
Park bench.
Sir, park
can we
bench.
help you?
Yes. The security on the bicycles were not happy with me. I didn't want to miss my opportunity. I didn't want to miss any opportunity to talk to you. I couldn't wait to talk to you. You've been my therapy. You all listening, have been a damn good friend. That contract is now up. And after some not so easy discussions, it's been decided that now is the time to say goodbye. You all have allowed me to live out a dream. And, sure, I've heard the jokes about being a New Yorker and all of that. But you all know I'm forever a Hoosier. We have Hoosiers listening to this show from Kentucky. Paul listens to San Francisco. Appreciate you, Paul. We have Hoosiers listening to us in Fort Lauderdale and Houston and Michigan, the Bronx, Atlanta, Charlotte, all over the country. There are proud Indiana natives cheering on the Pacers, the Colts, the Boilermakers, the Bulldogs, the Hoosiers, while living far from home. And tuning in and joining this culture of laughter, of humility, and fun that we've tried to create each day. In a day and age where everybody's kind of yelling at each other on radio and on television, Joe, we didn't want to take ourselves that seriously. We don't take ourselves that seriously. Everyone is open for getting clowned. Joe's shorts and feelers are an example of that. My scarves and Uggs, whatever it may be. Joe's ridiculous locker room interviews.
Back to you.
Quentin Nelson's no answer.
Back to you. Something bad about you.
What's on the wall in the studio?
You try to grab Lance Stevenson's
No. Quentin Nelson's no answer is still one of my favorite moments. The silly idea for a pop quiz and meshing that with my ridiculous affinity for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Without that, we wouldn't have gotten that Ray Skillman answer, which brought out a laughter that reverberated through the city so hard that I think it registered on the Richter scale. That was fantastic. It's been an honor and a privilege to talk, debate, and joke with you all these past 8 years, and some of you, many of you, so many of you are basically a part of the show. Fresh Face, Jay Nilla, Greg Blunt, Aaron, Terrence, Paul, who has to whisper at work. Our show regulars like MC, KB, Chappie, Holder, Rick Venturi, our main man Mike Wells. Shout out to my main man Tucker Barnhart and the friendship that we've developed through this show. Chris Mannix, I hate you. Scoop Jackson, you're my guy. Fantastic people behind the scenes like Eric Wannenberg, John Griffin, Molly Carnes, Greg Rakestraw, who while I was at Vincennes, I interviewed. I needed to interview a radio professional, and Greg Rakestraw was the program director for was it X950X or something. He worked for what was then the ESPN affiliate in Indianapolis, and I interviewed Greg. And obviously, we eventually, worked together here with the Fan. And fantastic man, and appreciate you, Greg. I have to thank my family. My mom, again, single-parent household. She busted her tail. My sister, I love you. Congratulations on your promotion. My cousins, who are basically my siblings. Josh, Livia, Angelo, Corey. Love you all. My grandfather, who's listening right now and still listened every day, and he would call me up and you were right, Granddaddy. The Colts did win double-digit games this season. You called it from the beginning. You called it. My grandmother, my aunts and uncles, I love you all, and my apologies for this. This is your life ramble, but I am very proud of our journey, and it's one I always will share with young broadcasters because, my story's not over, but everybody's story is different in how they get where they're going. Every story is unique and special. I'm in New York. I met the love of my life here in New York. I've been on this amazing ride with you all these years. Yet, if I had called Ken Sterling at 3:16, everything that I've been talking about these past 18 minutes may not have happened. Love and embrace your journey, the highs and the lows. And though my path is changing, we're always going to be family. Love you guys. I know this is just the start of the show, and we got a lot of stuff to get to. But I wanted to share that with you all before we get rolling. Love you, Joe. Love you, David. Love you, Scotty. Love everybody listening. Mike Wells, who we just like, is going to join us after this time out here on The Fan.